See, that felt good.
It felt good.
No?
It felt good.
No?
It felt hot.
So it looked like a Urus.
You're trying to get me to walk.
I saw it out the corner of my eye.
I did a step.
Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt.
And my name is Paulo, and we have the Chevy Blazer SS EV.
And this is the first SS electric product from Chevy. And I'm gonna walk you around the 15 things that you need to know about it.
Yeah, we're gonna get behind the wheel, talk about the standouts and some of the pros and cons. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Now before we dive into the meat and potatoes, let's zoom in and talk about some of the funky little features that I noticed this week. Starting with the fact that there is no start-stop button. Now this is pretty common in EVs. Sit down, there's a sensor in the seat, put your foot on the brake, and now you're good to go. Just throw it into drive or reverse. If you throw it into reverse, it does jiggle the seat. But one of my favorite things is actually the perforations here on the seat. Now you can see that they're like lightning bolts or zappy little bolts like you'd see on Harry Potter's forehead. I bet no one else on YouTube has talked about the zappy perforations in the seats. And when we go into drive modes, there's this button here, which I'll press. Hope you can hear that. That's your wide open watts setting. And what it essentially does is function kind of like a boost button. It'll add 100 horsepower and something like 200 pound-feet of torque. Again, it makes a funny little theatrical sound, but I do think it would be nice to have a little shortcut button for this somewhere either on the steering wheel, like this blank switch here, or somewhere in the dash, so I didn't have to go from whatever screen I was on to the drive modes to then select boost. This is a nice little feature that BMW has on a paddle here, so I can rock around in normal mode, where it's the smoothest and most comfortable, and then press that little button or pull the paddle, and then I have all the power to overtake somebody or merge onto the highway. And as you can see, we have the world's smallest rear wiper. Another GM EV staple is the regen paddle that you have here on the steering wheel. Now this isn't uncommon. A lot of EVs have a regen paddle or a paddle on each side to dial up or down levels of regen. And on the Cadillac, this is a graduating regen paddle. So the more you pull it, the more regen and the more braking force you're gonna get. But here on the Blazer EV, it's binary. So it's just on or off, on or off. So it's a little bit more jerky, and I don't like it quite as much as I do in the Cadillacs, but still a nice little feature that I find myself using quite a bit. And a little complaint is you can probably see some of the glare on the windshield here. Now most dashboards at the top are pretty smooth like we see right here, but this one has a little embellishment down here and just catches the light a bit and reflects up onto the windshield, which is a little bit distracting. And of course you have an SS logo on your front grille, but you might not have expected to see it in the spoke of your wheel. And then we're back inside to talk drive modes. So you've got normal ones like normal, sport, snow and ice, and a My mode. This is something that you can customize with steering, braking feel, etc. But you also have Z mode, which is different somehow. You can select between normal and sport steering, brake feel, acceleration feel, but here you've got competitive mode, not competition mode, but competitive mode. You select that and it turns off stability control, and then it's actually pretty good to drive this thing. It of course puts you in wide open watts automatically when you go into competitive mode. But the last little thing is the auto park assist, and it'll do parallel or perpendicular parking assist, and that's just kind of nice. Well, let's zoom back out and talk about the big stuff. Now, what's the big deal? What's new for 2025? Well, we had the Blazer EV last year, but this is the first time that we've had the Blazer EV SS. In fact, this is the first electric SS product from Chevy ever, and it's also the fastest SS product in a straight line. So yeah, I guess it is a big deal. But speaking of speed, let's talk about power. Now this is dual motor all-wheel drive as standard for your SS. It's rear bias, adding a little bit more power to the back, and it's making 615 horsepower, which is more than basically anything it competes against, and 650 pound-feet of torque, which means 0 to 60 is good for 3.4 seconds. Let's talk about batteries, range, and charging. Now your charging door is on your front driver's side fender. This is typically where it is for GM EVs. There's these two little buttons here that you push, and then it'll take its time, but it will electronically deploy your charging port. Now, the battery in this Blazer EV SS is the biggest one in the Blazer EV lineup. It's 102 kilowatt hours, and GM or Chevy says it's good for about 303 miles of range. Now, we did our own testing, our Lakeshore Loop, which is about 30 miles of country roads and highway and city driving, and we came back with 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour, which equates to 316 miles of effective range. Now we also did a 75 mile an hour highway torture test because, as we know, EVs aren't quite as happy on the highway, and came back with about 2.2 miles per kilowatt hour, which is an effective range on a full charge of 225 miles. So again, depending on what type of driving you're doing, your range will differ pretty significantly. But like I said, when you do need to charge this thing, the charger is here on the front driver's side fender. It'll charge up to 190 kilowatts, and on a level 2 at home, if you want to charge, it'll charge at 11.5 kilowatts, which means it can charge overnight. But I guess the biggest and most important news is with an adapter, you can charge at Tesla stations. So basically any charger you come across, you'll be able to charge this thing as long as you've got the right adapter. And we will talk more about this later on in the video when we get behind the wheel, but here we do have the Performance Pack. It's about a $400 option, and it upgrades your brake pads and rotors and your tires. We're now riding on a Continental Premium Contact 6 tire. We've also got static dampers, so no adaptive suspension, which is a little bit odd, but we do have 6-piston Brembo brakes up front. It's a little bit stiff, as you might expect from a performance-oriented thing, but not too much so. The steering actually feels pretty good, and again, we'll talk more about this stuff later. And in terms of styling, this may have been a main character in the Barbie movie, but this, our spec, looks more Batman than Barbie. It actually looks pretty cool. Now, if it were me and my money, I really do like that radiant red tri-coat that we had on the Lyriq last year, and I think you can get that color on this as well. But fun fact, all Blazer EV SSs are gonna come with the black roof. So here, obviously in our black spec, it looks monochrome, but it will be two-tone for every other color. Now back up front, obviously we do have a pretty signature or pretty unique LED running bar that runs across the entire width of the grille. Our bow tie also lights up. We've got SS in our grille, a more embellished front grille with a splitter. We've got an embellished side skirt and a little bit of a diffuser, although it seems less aggressive than some of the other ones I've seen on the internet. But anyway, around the side, you got 22-inch wheels. So you can get two options for your 22s. These are the more gunmetal gray option, but you can get a fully gloss black option. And again, we've got 6-piston Brembos that say SS poking out from behind, and it's wrapped in Continental Premium Contact 6 rubber. Again, there's that kind of aggressive side skirt, but from the profile you can see just how high the belt line is on this thing and how kind of short the windows are. So it does feel a little bit Camaro in some respects. Coming around your rear quarter, your taillight casing isn't red, so you have actual red LEDs for your brake lights, and you've got some reverse lights that are LEDs as well. We've also got the world's smallest rear wiper and a little bit of a diffuser going on, but again, fairly subtle. SS logo on the right-hand side and Blazer logo with the 3 blue bars on the driver's side. And then we'll open up the trunk, which is of course powered, as you might expect, and we do have a button for power close, but no separate button to close and lock. A little bit of a ding, but not really the biggest deal. Now, what we're looking at in terms of space is 25.5 cubic feet of space. That's pretty decent, but compared to something like me and my wife's CR-V hybrid, this is quite a bit smaller. With the rear seats folded down, it makes a pretty flat floor, and then you're looking at 59.1 cubic feet of space. But again, in something like a CR-V or a RAV4, which are even a little bit smaller than this, you're looking at about 77 or 75 cubic feet of space. But you do have a little bit of storage underneath the floor here, which is pretty nice. There's no sorts of grocery bag hangers, but there are lights. And the other thing that I thought was a little bit interesting that's lacking here is an outlet. But overall, it's not like this is an impractical space, it's just not quite as large as maybe I was expecting. But it's a nice rectangular opening, the load floor is pretty low, so it's easy to put stuff in, so it's hard to say that this is a con. And as we get to the rear doors, they open not quite 90 degrees, but still, it's a relatively decent opening. Now we've got a little bit of detailing here in our door card. We've got some red leather or synthetic leather here. No window shades, a little bit of a miss, but we see we have a pretty decent rear seat in terms of space. The same kind of Zappy perforations continue into the rear with the red interior. I'll step in. I'm at 6'1", and I've got pretty decent leg room. That's actually my driving position, and I have more over there. This is somebody's been lounging here. But here really is kind of the con side of the rear seat. I don't have as much headroom as I would like in here, and maybe that has something to do with the $1,500 panoramic roof option that we've got on our tester, which is nice. It actually has a shade, unlike most pano roofs in EVs, and the sunroof actually tilts and opens a little bit, which is pretty cool. We do have vents back here, we've got dual USB-Cs, and 3-level heated seats for each of the outboard seats. So overall, it's hard to complain too much about the rear seat in the Blazer EV. Which of course brings us to our front seats. which have 2-level memory, which is quite nice. We've got SS logos embossed into the headrests themselves, the same perforations, 3-level heated, 3-level cooled, and a heated steering wheel with this little button here, SS logo, and some red stitching on the rim. So overall, it's pretty comfortable, and I've got nothing to complain about up here. And then when it comes to the cabin experience, now obviously you can see that it's largely dominated by the huge screens, but we'll get to that in a second. The interior here that we have is one of two. This is the incredibly red interior. If you didn't like this, you could go for the other interior, which is black with some gray and some orange accenting. That actually might look kind of nice with our black exterior package. But we do have some physical climate controls right under our screen, but it's tied in, so like half the stuff is in the screen and half the stuff is a physical button. All of your heated and cooled seats is in the screen itself, but your HVAC, your fan speed, and that sort of stuff is physical, which is pretty nice. The materials do feel pretty familiar Chevy, but almost a little bit nicer. The seats, the leather, the synthetic leather isn't quite as rubbery, and it breathes a little bit better than in the Equinox, so I do appreciate that. But we do have our crazy turbine vents, and they even have some ambient light that comes out of the center of them, which is pretty cool at night, although maybe a little bit stronger LEDs would be appreciated, but that is the nittiest of nitpicks. But overall, I don't have any major complaints with the interior. Here's your cup holders. They're in a sensible spot. You've got a wireless charger up here, and you've got this cubby up here, which works great for my enormous water bottle. And you even have a little bit of extra storage up here underneath your vents. This would be a good place for like a wallet or some sunglasses, but it is a little bit less visible, so don't forget anything up there. But then when it comes to technology, back on these big screens, we're actually gonna start up here with your head-up display, which is great. It's huge, it's vivid, it shows me everything I want to see. Down below, we've got a fully digital instrument cluster with a couple different views that you can control here. We can set different things inside of our screen as well if we want. But this is a more conventional style, left and right. We've got a full map view, and we do have a more driver assistant oriented one with our follow distance, and of course a calm screen. I am seeing a lot of my reflection on here, but I don't see that as much in real life, so that is kind of nice. But over here is your almost 18-inch screen, and it is huge. It does feel huge, and the biggest ding is that there is no Apple CarPlay and no Android Auto. A little unacceptable. We've talked about it in every other GM EV, so we won't harp on it here, but it needs to have it. We do have Google built in, though, to their credit. So we've got Assistant, we've got the Play Store, we've got Alexa, and we've got News, and we've got Spotify, Apple Music, Google Maps, and I get why they do it, right? They do it so when you go into Google Maps and you type in an address, it'll tell you exactly where you're going to get and with what battery you're going to get there. Since it's built into the car, it's got better route planning and better predictive range estimates than something like an Apple Maps or a Google Maps from your phone. So that's why they do it. Now with that said, let's go back and talk about some of the great things. You throw it into reverse and you've got great 360 cameras. We've got a forward-facing view, a rear-facing view, an overhead view with trajectory, and we've even got side tolerances. So if you're parking next to a curb, it's easy to not curb your huge 22-inch wheels and scuff them up. But we do have a digital rear view mirror as well, which is quite nice. Again, wireless charger, so overall, the safety suite is pretty good. And one of the best things is this button right here. This is your Super Cruise. The hardware is built in, and you've got 3 years of Super Cruise included when you buy the car. Super Cruise continues to be one of the best, if not the best, driver assistance or quote-unquote autopilot systems in the game. And the last thing that we'll cover before we get with Paulo and go for a bit of a drive is the price. Now, a Blazer EV SS starts at $60,600, but with our performance pack and some of the other things, we're testing at $64,180. That's including destination. The Blazer EV SS does come fully loaded, but obviously you can change things like your interior color or your paint color. And when you consider that the $64,000 that we're testing here includes destination, and an Ioniq 5N, which is a little bit smaller and less practical, is $68,000, and at the 64 mark, we're very close to a Kia EV6, which is again a little bit smaller and a little bit less practical. I think there's some value to be had here. So with that, let's get with Paulo and go for a bit of a drive. Hey guys, real quick, Matt here. Just wanted to say I hope you've been enjoying the video. If you have, would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it does go a long way in helping us get access to cars sooner and get access to manufacturer engineers so we can get more information on the cars and get you more information so you can make better decisions. So would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe, like, comment, the whole YouTube thing. But with that, let's get back to the video.
Dude, you should try this thing where you like sit up and if I floor it, do you like get held into the seat? Did you see that BMW video? Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so we're not gonna try. Okay. Hi.
You gotta
This
be
is
ready.
like what you did when we were at Road America and I was drinking and you're like, in the M240,
Dude,
Florida.
you gotta be ready, dude.
You're right, that's on me. That's on me entirely.
I'm just gonna do that every time you talk.
So it's quick.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
when you're done hearing from me, just floor it.
Right, yeah. No, it is very quick. Yeah, so we'll jump into the pros and cons.
I turned your wide open watts off.
Oh. I needed it there. Okay.
There we go.
But yeah,
You needed it.
I did.
Okay.
I did it. But yeah, I mean, that is the first thing, I think. It is extremely quick, 0 to 60 in like 3.5 seconds. The second thing is, like, I actually think from an exterior perspective, it looks really good.
Yeah.
Matt keeps on saying, it looks like a Urus, it looks like a Urus.
Yeah, Matt said that a bunch of times.
I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily...
Until a Urus pull up.
I wouldn't go that far and say it looks like a Urus, but I
No,
do
that would be
think
ridiculous to say.
it does look really good,
That
though.
would be
Like,
outrageous to say. No,
actually-
it does look cool. It looks sharp and aggressive in the front, almost like a Urus.
Mhm.
And in the back, it looks incredibly wide
Yeah.
and low.
Yep.
And you can see the tallest point of the car is right here, right where the top of the windshield meets the car. The rest of it slopes down. So it's an interesting, aggressive shape.
Yeah, and I like the little fins that you have in front of the rear tires and stuff. Like, there's just some
Yeah.
design elements that I really, really like.
Yeah.
Some other things, gotta love a Super Cruise.
How could you not?
And I tested it on the highway where we have a lot of construction, and it actually did like really, really well.
Look, it's you in 5 years.
No, I wouldn't run that
No, this
slow.
is you yesterday.
Right, yeah.
Just catching strays on his run this morning. Poor guy.
The other thing that I like is the SS, I feel like comes basically fully loaded, like with all the options you could possibly want. You got
Yeah.
the Brembos on here.
Yeah, so we got the upgraded performance pack, which is $400.
Worth it.
But even without that, you get 6 piston Brembos up front.
Mhm.
But the performance pack gets you pads, rotors, and tires, and it's like $400. So like great value.
Yeah, that. So the last thing on the positive side
Don't the squirrel.
that kind of really stood out for me is just like, it's practical too. Its size, obviously being an SUV, how you like interact. It's got like a really decent storage here.
Yeah, this is nice. I've had my big bottle and it fits in here.
Yeah, so I mean, just like, I think it's just extremely practical.
Works. Yeah.
Cons, this interior color is not for me, and like I think
It's a bit too red.
you can only get 2 color waves inside, right?
Yeah, it's either this, which is bright red. I would prefer a little bit more muted, like burgundy type red.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can go for, it's like a black with some gray and some orange. I don't know. I mean, I guess between the two, I would go with this. I do like that the perforations are little like lightning bolts.
I feel like this one's kind of just little like creaks and rattles, and the interior materials, I just feel like I've always just had this, like Chevy to me just doesn't really make the best quality materials.
Yeah, I mean, this is better than like the leather in an Equinox. It's not as rubbery, and you do have cooled seat, and that helps. But like that seat developed a creak laterally. So like when you start to push this thing and you start to lean on the bolsters, that seat did start to creak a little bit. And like, you know, this isn't unique to the Blazer EV. We've had creaks and rattles in the Silverado EV. We've had creaks and rattles in the Escalade IQ, which was $168,000. We had it in the Lyriq last year, the cup holder thing. So yeah. There's stuff you're going to have to get used to.
Yeah, and then the other one is these tires are pretty loud, and the suspension is very stiff. Obviously, it's kind of tuned for performance.
Yeah.
But I just think it's worth noting. I don't know if I'd necessarily call that a con. I guess if you're aware of, it's just something to be aware of.
I think the thing that stands out to me is, yes, the ride is a bit stiff, and tires transfer some noise in. It's not outrageous. But what is outrageous is I've seen some people online, I won't name names, but there's some people online that are saying that this rides better than an Ioniq 5N, and I just don't think that's even kind of true.
No.
Now, granted, we haven't been in an Ioniq 5N in about a year, but like that has this has, you know, non-adaptive suspension. It is fairly stiff. It kind of thunks over bumps and expansion joints like the Mach E GT. Felt very similar the way that this goes over bumps like with that one.
Yeah.
But I think the Ioniq 5N rides better.
Yeah.
I think the EV6 GT also rides better. But I do think you get a pretty good value here for money, because this is about the same money as an EV6 GT, but you got more back seat space, you've got about the same size trunk, you've got more range, you've got a lot less Apple CarPlay, but like you get decent think you get a decent package here. You get a decent bang for your buck.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, overall, I'm pretty positive about this thing. I think they did a decent job. So thank you to them. Thank you to Chevy for letting us have a go on your Blazer EV SS. Thank you to you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.